Hey, fans of 10 Minute Marvel, and those people randomly finding this on YouTube, it's time for another theory. This time, we're going with the theory that I started to posit on this week's 10 Minute Marvel podcast. Check that out there. I'm going to recap that theory as to the plot of the Fantastic Four movie. Now, it's important to know as we're talking about this that this builds off of, is the Fantastic Four going to be set in the 60s? And my answer to that question is yes, but only some. And it's going to work in probably not quite the normal, potentially normal way that is being tossed out. To kind of set some background for it, there's kind of three different ways you could set part of the Fantastic Four in the 60s. First off, you can have it set in the 60s. You can have it set in the 60s, and then somehow they end up in the current MCU. So they start out in the past in the MCU, and they work their way forward. That has some inherent flaws with it, mainly how have they not been mentioned before. Now, the next way is you could have them come from a different universe's 1960s, and end up in the modern MCU. But that then begs the question, why do they not try and get back? Galactus would be the big reason, but why would they not try to go back, if they can time travel, to a time before Galactus came to figure out how to stop Galactus? And the other one is that they go from the present MCU to the past. And that's where my theory lands for this. I think there's a real shot they come from the present to the past and then back to the present. That's the big crux of the movie. And how would that work, though? Well, I think we've already had a hint of it in WandaVision. So in WandaVision, the SWORD director, and this is going to kind of start into my theory and plot for this movie, the SWORD director mentions that when Thanos snapped, there were just people in space, astronauts, part of SWORD, who just disappeared. They're gone. I think the Fantastic Four was one of those crews. They were doing an exploratory mission into space. They get snapped away. When Hulk snaps to bring everybody back, it's said that he does so to make sure that everybody's safe. So like if you're in an airplane when this happened, you just don't show up randomly in the sky. He brought him back to the ground. The astronauts, I think they came back to their spaceship. And I think that's where we're going to pick up the Fantastic Four movie. I think we're going to see them come back into a spaceship that has been floating in space for 5 years. Alarms are blaring. It's warning of malfunctions, cosmic radiation that is causing issues. And the Fantastic Four are going to get their powers. But that doesn't happen instantaneously. What happens is they're getting bombarded with this cosmic radiation. Reed and Ben Grimm, they're trying to get out of there as fast as possible. So they gun it. They use one of the jump points, and it launches them not only through space, but through time as well, and they time travel back to the past. It technically is a branch timeline at that point, but we're going to call it MCU universe adjacent. It's going to almost be identical. But now they have a broken down ship that they land on the Earth. They realize, oh, this isn't what it's supposed to be. They get their powers, and it's now the focus of Reed and of Ben Sue, everybody to get back to the present. Not only is it a concern because they're in the past, they want to get back to the present, but also there's a being out there that feeds off of this cosmic energy, this cosmic radiation, and they've just been bombarded with it. Their ship has been bombarded with it. They're now a bright beacon of this within the universe. So the Silver Surfer shows up and warns that Galactus is coming. And Galactus is coming to devour them, to devour their ship, and to devour the planet, because the planet is now kind of that beacon of this cosmic radiation. So they have a timeline. This is their deadline. This is kind of the crux of what it is. Galactus is a being that wants to devour. Their goal is to get off of Earth. And Reed and Ben, Johnny, Sue, they have to make that work with only what's available in the 1960s. So they have to retrofit. They have to take technology that doesn't exist yet from their own ship and put it together into its own ship to rebuild what they had, to be able to get off Earth, and not only just get off Earth, but to be able to travel back to where they're supposed to be, so that they're not being chased by Galactus. They would just blip out of existence from as far as Galactus knows. And so they race to do that. They build it, they jump, and they find themselves in the main MCU. But now, things are a little bit different. What they knew from 5 years ago has changed. The world has changed. And Reed wants to take this to the person who he worked with in college. Someone who he had theorized about time travel, about different universes with, Victor Von Doom. But Victor Von Doom is no longer just a college student, just Reed's friend. He's been hardened. He's been changed by the time of the snap, of the blip, because he did not disappear. Instead, now he finds himself ruling a new country, a country that popped up and was created by him during the blip to protect the people who lived in his homeland, in the area that he grew up, Latveria. And so it's now a new country, and the threat of Galactus, the Silver Surfer, all of that is still out there. And it might be an issue coming up again in the future here, but they managed to save the MCU adjacent universe branch timeline in the past by escaping it. Of course, now they've traveled between universes, and, well, that might have its own consequences as well, leading into Secret Wars, leading into Avengers 5. So let me know your thoughts on that theory. That's basically the theory that I tossed out on the podcast. Let me know if you like it. Greg later this week is going to have a response video to this, kind of poking holes in it, or just saying, no, Petter, you're a genius. You got this right. That's, in my head, that's how it's going to go, and what I'm going to hear, no matter what he says. But let me know your thoughts on that down in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this content, please subscribe, give this video a thumbs up. And if you want to check out more and where this theory originally came from, you can check out the 10-Minute Marvel podcast over on iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, or wherever you get your friendly neighborhood podcasts from. But with that, we'll see you next time.